Again, my name is Gene Polosinski, and I'm Senior Vice President and Executive Director of the First Amendment Center at the Newseum, and with offices also at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome to the Newseum, for those of you who are joining us. Welcome to the Knight Conference Center here atop the Newseum, for those of you also, not in addition to being here in the room, watching us on streaming video. You do have an opportunity when Q&A sessions begin to ask questions on Twitter via @openthegov or through email at questions@openthegovernment.org, and we'll use those questions in our Q&A as well. We've come to what I just named a few minutes ago, the lightning round. One of the great hallmarks of FOI Day, of National Freedom of Information Day, is that it is also a gathering spot for organizations that deal in the subject matter, and that we provide an opportunity for the community and the nation at large via streaming to hear about activities, events, programs, reports that are out there, hopefully adding to the knowledge and explanation of this subject about which you all care so much. So with that, we'll begin presentations from several groups and organizations as noted in your agenda. If you're watching, again, streaming, you can go to openthegovernment.org or firstamendmentcenter.org or newseum.org and find the agenda. And I'm sure there are a host of other places one may go these days. With that, allow me to bring up our first group, the Union of Concerned Scientists.
Good morning. I'm Celia Wexler with the Center for Science and Democracy at the Union of Concerned Scientists. Our center, launched just last year, seeks to promote the essential role of science in driving democratic discourse and informing public policy. Freedom of information is crucial to that goal. Have you heard the one about the two-headed fish and the federal scientist? Well, you may well have heard about the fish. It was the star of a Daily Show segment. The federal scientist, not so much. There was a Fish and Wildlife Service scientist who knew about the two-headed fish and the toxic impacts of selenium, a byproduct from the operations of an Idaho mining company. That scientist was asked to be on The Daily Show, but his agency bosses strongly discouraged him from appearing. If federal agencies were just saying no to The Daily Show, things wouldn't be so bad. But too often, in far too many federal science agencies, there are routine barriers between scientists and journalists, barriers that not only make reporters work harder, but that deprive the American public of news they could really use. That's unfortunate, because the best way to learn about the issues that challenge us, be it the effects of toxic chemicals on wildlife, or the impact of rising sea levels, or the flaws in our drug approval process, is to talk to the people who actually do the work and understand the science. Today, I'm happy to release our report, and here it is, Grading Government Transparency, Scientist Freedom to Speak and Tweet at Federal Agencies. Our survey assesses the media policies of 17 federal agencies, and for the first time, we've evaluated and included agency policies on the use of social media. Our results? We found that there's been some improvement since our last scorecard in 2008, but much more needs to be done. For example, only 3 agencies, EPA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the National Science Foundation, affirmed 2 essential rights: the right of scientists to speak to the media in their personal capacity, and the right to have final review of agency materials that rely heavily on their research. In contrast, the Department of Agriculture and the Occupational Safety and Health Administration each have conflicting and confusing policies that put up roadblocks, making it easier for political appointees to deny reporters access to scientists and far more difficult for scientific information to reach the public. These report cards are based on the agency's stated policies. We are not evaluating performance, but the policies themselves, posted online at our website, ucsusa.org/media policies, are a valuable resource. Now, Gretchen Goldman, the principal author of our report, is in the audience, and if she can stand or wave. She'll be happy to answer any questions you may have about the report. I didn't do any heavy lifting on the report. I just get to talk about it. Also in our audience is Dr. Andrew Rosenberg, the director of our new Center for Science and Democracy. And thank you very much. And we do have copies of the report and the scorecard outside.
And now, from the National Freedom of Information Coalition, please, Dr.
Good morning. I'm Ken Bunning. I'm Executive Director of NFOIC, the National Freedom of Information Coalition. I promised Patrice and Jean I would be brief, and even though neither have ever known me to be that, they graciously offered me this opportunity. So not to abuse their foolish trust, I will get straight to the point and reduce my comments to one last-minute reminder and one shameless plug. The reminder is this. For those of you familiar with or concerned about FOI issues at the state level, today is the deadline for nominating honorees for Heroes of the 50 States, the State Open Government Hall of Fame. There's still time if you know someone who should be considered for that honor. Some of you may have seen emails and announcements on the listserv or in our newsletters. It's a recognition for an individual, living or dead, active or retired, who has made substantial, sustained, and lasting contribution to open government or freedom of information within a particular state. It's a Lifetime Achievement Award begun a decade ago by leaders of the Society of Professional Journalists and NFOIC before my time. All that's needed to make a nomination is a cover letter, preferably electronically, supporting letters from others besides the nominator or other backup materials, or accepted and welcome but not required. If you send in a nomination, it's important to remember that it is indeed for recognition for work within a single state, and that it is a long-time or lifetime achievement award. I'll be around all day. Please corner me if you have questions about it, the looming deadline, or the nominating process, or go to www.nfoic.org, Open Government Hall of Fame. Judging and evaluation starts next week. The honoree will be named sometime in April, and he or she will be formally inducted into the State Open Government Hall of Fame. And here comes that shameless plug I mentioned, at our national conference, the FOI Summit, which is held this year, May 17th and 18th in New Orleans. Those of you who have been to the FOI Summit know the quality of issue-related programming we present. Unfortunately, I cannot announce a keynote speaker today. I was hoping I could. But the agenda is shaping up with program segments that will be trend-setting, educational, and provocative. One definite program segment is entitled Technology and Access, Promise, Possibility, and Perils. Two others that show the overlap between federal FOIA issues and state FOIA issues are entitled The Deliberative Process, 150 Years Post-Lincoln, and Digital Dodges and the Email Sleight of Hand. And yet another panel about the changes in the news industry that's focused, that affects open government adequacy, is simply entitled Not a Picayune Problem. Links to registration can be found at nfoic.org, 2013 FOI Summit. Again, it's May 17th and 18th in beautiful New Orleans. Hope to see many of you there.
And now from the Center for Responsive Government.
Center for Effective
Government, excuse me.
That's okay.
See, I
I guess you have to be responsive or be effective, but no, I can't cover that mistake. The Center for Effective Government.
Thank you. Earlier this week, we released two reports, and I'll be brief on both so I can fit them both in. But the first was actually a follow-up to some extent on a report we did 4 years ago. As the incoming administration was arriving, we worked collaboratively with over 100 other groups and individuals around the country and delivered to the administration a set of detailed recommendations on what we thought the new administration should be doing to be more transparent along three main areas: usability of information, use of technology, creating an environment within the government that encourages transparency, and on national security secrecy. And so earlier this week, we issued this report, Delivering on Open Government, the Obama administration's unfinished legacy, where we evaluate them on these three main areas. The Reader's Digest version of the conclusion is they've made some tremendous strides in establishing a policy foundation for openness, with new policies on scientific integrity coming up, stronger policies on FOIA, a new open government directive. But the implementation of these has been uneven, as Celia's report really gets into. They're trying to make progress, and yet the implementation and the enforcement of these policies has not been as consistent as we'd like to see it. The other big takeaway is the area they've done very well in implementation is use of technology. They've really continued to push stepping up and allowing agencies to use more technology, to use it better, APIs, mobile applications, social media. They see technology as a solution, as part of a strategy to communicate with the public, and we certainly agree with that. The final thing from the report would be that the area where we've seen the least traction for these transparency principles that the administration so often espouses has been in national security secrecy. There's been some efforts and attention given to the matter, but very little progress has been made. It's been more of the same from previous administrations, and it's been a real disappointment. The second report that we released just Wednesday deals with an analysis of FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, and the 2012 performance. We evaluated 25 agencies and put that information and compared them through data going all the way back to 1998 when this data was being collected. And again, we see uneven performance among the agencies, and some things to cheer about and some things to groan about. The agencies are processing more requests. The 25 agencies we looked at processed more than 500,000 requests last year. They reduced their backlog by 12% from the previous year, and that's certainly to the good. Unfortunately, the response rates, they granted a lot of the requests, at least in part or in full, when you look at all the agencies. But when you looked a little deeper, we found that those grantings in full fell to their lowest level on record. Just below 41% of those records that were processed by the agency and a decision was made, 41% were given all the information they wanted. So the administration is relying more heavily than ever on partial grantings. In other words, they're using a lot more exemptions, withholding documents or redacting documents, and giving out part. Unfortunately, the data on the partial granting and the use of exemptions isn't sophisticated enough for us to tell you whether or not it's a net gain or a net loss. These partial exemptions could be them releasing 99 documents out of 100 and withholding 1, or they could be withholding 99 documents and releasing 1. It's still a partial grant, and it could still be a single exemption use, either one of those cases. And so it's very hard without a record count or a page count to understand how much they're releasing and how much they're withholding under these partial grants. We also found some very interesting information, a wide range of cost information in terms of agencies' effectiveness in terms of processing these requests. Some agencies seem to be able to get their costs down below $200 a request. Other agencies are thousands of dollars per request. The most expensive agency was the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. They handle a lot of nuclear information, obviously, so it may make their processing a little bit more complicated, a little bit more exacting, but they got a per request around $8,000. So that's very expensive compared to other agencies, including Department of Homeland Security, who gets more requests than anyone else in our study, and they were around $200 a request. So they really got their costs down, and we want to see more agencies figure out ways to achieve those efficiencies. We have both of our reports available on our website, on our homepage, foreffectivegov.org, and I have a few copies here that I'm happy to share with anyone who's interested. Thank you.
And now we'll move to what I'm sure is the very effective Center for Responsive Politics.
Well done.
I am Dan Auble. I'm a senior researcher at the Center for Responsive Politics and OpenSecrets.org. Hope clearly I'm not Sheila, who could not be here today. If you're not familiar with us, we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan group who tracks money in politics, from things like the funding of campaigns to lobbying expenditures, the revolving door, the personal finances of our officials. And what I'm here to plug is actually an upcoming report next week. On Wednesday, we'll be publishing a report that looks at some of the reasons that overall lobbying expenditures and the number of lobbyists who are registering has been declining for several years. And there are several reasons that have been postulated for that, everything from the lackluster economy in general to policies implemented by the Obama administration that restricts hiring of lobbyists into the administration, the Honest Leadership and Open Government Act that was passed about 5 years ago, and some of the policies that it implemented. So what we're looking at is lobbyists who became inactive following a year where they were active lobbyists. And we take a look at where those people have ended up, if they're still working at the same place, if they've moved into government. And in addition to trying to answer some of those other questions, we're using this to try and take a look at if there's a problem in the disclosure that's causing some of this decline, especially in the number of registered lobbyists, or if there are other factors that overwhelm that. And in addition to the report, which will be released next Wednesday morning, we'll have a web chat at 11 a.m. And we'll be joined by Monty Ward, from the American League of Lobbyists, and Dr. Tim Lapira from James Madison University, their political science department, and also myself and Sarah Briner, who is our research director, will also sit in. So please check in at OpenSecrets.org next Wednesday or any time before then for more details, and we hope you'll join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know. We hadn't really planned on questions for these folks, but we do have a couple of minutes if there's a question that might have been raised by the presentation, and if not, we would thank you for taking the time to be here and let us know about your work. Well, let's go ahead and we'll move on to our next panel then. Thank you again very much.